Morning, my friends. Welcome to another installment of the Breakfast with the Fat Man. And the cat was just investigating my bowl. She's like that, right? I never met a cat that didn't like milk, except this cat. She can't decide if she wants it or not. Anyway, a couple days ago, our friend Tim of Samwise 7 fame posted a video he found of somebody named Bill Allen, who's talking on the topic of being a game master, or a experienced GM, however you wish to look at it, and the attributes and the requirements it takes to become a master of our craft. Well, a lot of good stuff, and mostly I agreed with just about everything he said, although there was a couple points in there I had to kind of go, maybe not so much. Okay. When I was 8 or 9 years old, my best friend and I used to race home from school every Wednesday, because there was this hour window between when the elementary school got out of school and the high school kids came home. So we could sneak into his brother's stuff, get access to his brother's original D&D core book, and now I want to say it was the original Gygax version, but don't quote me on that. And he would run a game and I would play, and occasionally another friend would come along. So I started out as a player at 9. That would have been 1976, 1975, something like that, right? A few years later, I turned about 10 years old. I've told this story a few times. I had an opportunity to get a ride with a friend into Des Moines, which is 20 miles from my hometown. And for a 10-year-old, this is a kind of a big adventure, because I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell anybody. I just jumped in the van with my friend and his dad, and we drove into what was then known as Ivor's Dungeon. It was this little hole-in-the-wall game store. And that's your traditional game store full of video games and toys and gizmos and comic books and mangas, because none of that stuff really existed in this genre at that point. What did exist was still quite extensive for 78 years, 1978. But to a young man's eyes, it was just a whole new world that opened up to me. And there was a lot of old stuff in there that by today's standards would be real old. A lot of new stuff that still by today's standards would be very old. And a lot of it nobody knows about or heard about. It hasn't heard from, or you have to really dig deep to find those people have those things. He also catered to the tabletop wargaming fan group, which at the time was probably greater than the tabletop gaming group. The Wargaming Club, you had all the little miniatures, and there were all the lead miniatures, lead armies, and the rules for them, and naval combat, and so on and so forth. I purchased my first basic set, which was red, the red box, the red book, set in Greyhawk, and went home. I read this book inside and out. And if those of you who have seen the book, or seen a copy of the book, or seen a PDF of the book, no, it's not very extensive. It is the Dungeon Master Guide, the Player Handbook, and the Monster Manual, all wrapped into one little package. And there was a couple supplements and some character sheets and a map that came in the box, plus a set of very cheap plastic dice, which someplace, somewhere in my bag of dice, I probably still have that particular, set. Whether I could pinpoint the set or not, this is obviously not from that set. But I have several of those cheapo plastic sets that came in the boxes that are still in my bags, and I never went out of my way to buy them, so I know that's where they came from. No questions there. So this began a lifelong love of role-playing games in general, tabletop war games included, uh, but a journey of discovery and trial and error as a game master, as a dungeon master, as which is what we were calling ourselves at the time. You know, all like Gary Gygax is coining the phrase. Could I say to somebody, "Am I a master GM now?" Well, I've got 40 years plus. I turned 51 September 20th. So I started this when I was 10, when I bought my first book. And it was, you could argue I did a little bit before that, but I didn't have access to the books. I didn't have my own book. I didn't spend X amount of time like I did when I first started playing and sneaking in one day a week for an hour in my friend's house, in my friend's basement. Uh, no, 40 years, 41 years. And the challenge of making a carte blanche statement that you're, an expert at anything or a master of anything is a little bit of hubris, along mixed in with a lot of, I wouldn't say hard work, but experience. The only way you can gain experience is by repeatedly doing something over and over and over again. And I agree with Bill Allen when he said it's not just enough to have played and mastered one game, but you should have played many games. And I've had these conversations numerous times over the last year in a number of blogs. When we did our 30-day challenge for August, come up several times. I've got easily 20 game systems under my belt, all of which, or majority of which, I have played and ran, or ran. I mean, there's a number I've never played as a player, but I've ran them. I have had spectacular successes, and I've had some really horrific fails as a GM, as part of the growing experience. And I agree with that. I agree with what he said in that aspect, that you have to fail at some point to have learned from it. And there's a key term right there. That's something that when I was younger, I would never agree to or subscribe to. Now I'm older and a little wiser, having been through the college of very hard knocks. I can tell you that, what goes with experience is learning from our mistakes, but also learning from our successes. Being able to recognize what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes the difference between recognizing what works for this given situation or this given group of players versus something else. There's another angle. You can be a great GM. You can be an experienced GM. You could have played, for 15 years. You could run a game system for 15 years with the same group of people. But that's not gaining experience, in the aspect that you reach a plateau at a certain point, and you meet the expectations of your group, and you know what they like and what they don't like and what it takes to motivate them and to keep play interesting, keep helping them stay immersed and helping yourself stay immersed in what you're doing. Even if you're hopping from game to game system, or introducing new game systems, the same core people. To gain real experience, to become a master of the craft, you need to run numerous game systems with numerous different people, different groups, completely different from each other as possible. Because through the diversity, we learn experience. We gain additional knowledge through diversity. We also learn tolerance. We also learn to expect the unexpected, because no two people think along the same lines. They all might have the same conclusion at some, but the journey it took for them to get to that conclusion can vary extremely, as is the nature of humanity, correct? One, we've all, as GMs, we've all got a story of, of somebody who stumped us, come out and played, fabulously, and then took the game in a whole different direction that we never expected it to go. And because of our experience and our knowledge, we're able to run with them. We're not falling behind and stumbling behind, and starting to panic because they're getting off the script, if you will. That goes back to some other points of the topic. The script itself, being able to script a campaign or an adventure, even if it's just a couple hour afternoon or one snuck in hour a week kind of thing, you have to be able to know how to measure or meter the script, how to pace it, how to adjust it accordingly, how to maintain some practical realisticness to yourself too. And that's not really a good set of words, I guess, but in the aspect that I could spend 10 hours or 100 hours on creating me a game script and say, well, this is what we're going to do. And then my player or players or one player in the group diverts from the script, and I either need to be able to adapt on the fly, shoot from the hip, so to speak, to accommodate them so that the game doesn't stall, the things don't slow down. And if it gets too far off the beaten track into some track that's not in the direction I intended for the larger picture, then as a GM, as an experienced GM, it's somehow or another, I need to know how to bring this group back around onto the script. Whether they loop back around, they flip back into it, or they slide sideways, or I somehow slide the script back onto the storyline so everybody's back in the story arc the way it's supposed to go. That takes experience. It takes experience. So now Bill Allen. And there was another video that Tim attached to Bill Allen's brigade blog or brigade discussion that I also viewed. Agreed with a lot of what they said. Said that we need to keep in mind that watching a bunch of how-to videos, and this holds true as you want to be an automotive mechanic or a computer repair guy, right? You can watch all the videos in the world you want. You can watch all the advice videos, the how-to videos, and you can follow them to some degree and gain some success. Hence, that's the reason they're for. They're helpful, useful tools to give you an edge or a leg up over your competitors, or to accomplish something you're not normally used to accomplishing. It helps you to establish a baseline of experience. But I can read every book in a game system. I can watch a lot of videos on how others played it. That doesn't mean I know how to run it myself. It does not mean I'm going to be a successful at running my first campaign or my fifth campaign in that setting, right? No. That comes with experience. Now, something Bill Allen said that this is where one of the few points I don't agree with or I disagree with when he makes the comment of that he can improvise on, can go in and improvise a game from scratch, from nothing, and have a great success at it, have an instant hit. Perhaps you can. Hey, perhaps you can, Bill. Maybe you that's your hubris is based off of fact, and you're that good. Although I would challenge that at some point you would find yourself stumbling, freezing up, bumbling, needing to pause to go rush back and do some instant research on something in the core book of a system you're not familiar with. Can you shoot from the hip? Absolutely. That's part and part. part and parcel of the grand experience that we get as game masters over time. Is that vast repertoire of various system material that we have access to, and in our personal libraries that we tend to accumulate, that allow us to adjust on the fly. So if we come into a situation that's not familiar with us, we can usually reference fairly quickly something that's close to what we need to do and wing it temporarily, short term winging it. For that moment, or maybe that half hour, that hour of the game, we can ad lib, but it may not be the best of what it could have been if we were more immersed in the rules or the mechanics or the story, right? Therein lies a different argument for a different day. GM Grumpy brought that up in a brief little splurt, that it's all about the story and the F with the mechanics. Old Grumpy Cat. Right? And he's not wrong in some of that aspects, but he's not necessarily 100% right either. But that's just my opinion, right? I mean, what's my opinion worth? And compared to everybody else's, you got to weigh that yourself, right? All I know is experience. This kind of rattled something around in my brain here, which scares people and myself sometimes, because I don't use that gray matter as well as a lot of other people do, and it's cost me over the decades. The lack of common sense kind of doesn't help either, right? In our gaming world, or worlds, if you will, character development and experience is accelerated, hugely accelerated. It's gotten even more so with the younger generations, or the more modern times, with the video games dominating everything out there. Everybody wants instant gratification. They expect something to happen in minutes or hours, or at the most, days of playing. When in truth, if you look at the metered development of a real world experience compared to gaming experience, it takes somebody who wants to master a craft. If you want to master magic, if you will, it would take them decades of real time to gain that experience, to gain that 10th level experience that they get in game in less than 6 weeks, 6 months. I guess it depends on the speed you play your game, how much of a min-max player or GM you are. The same goes for the fighter and the cleric and the rogue. They didn't just walk out and become this in a day. And yet that's kind of how it plays out in the games. We accelerate things on purpose, which, if you look at it from a different angle, this is why I've always been the fan of the long campaign, the extended play. I also been, there's another path I've experimented with. And there's another key of being a game master, or a veteran GM, is having experimented with what works and what doesn't work. Experimented not with the mechanics per se, but how you interpret these things and how you portray them to your group, and how the group plays it out. And you learn from success and failure what works and what don't work. Okay. Hey, I like the long campaign. In this aspect, I don't hand out gobs of experience and gobs of loot in short periods of time. I gradually give it to them as we go along. So we are going up at a slower arc for experience and wealth acquisitions of materials. The other experiment that I've done, and to some success, is the leapfrog campaign. Now, this works best with a group, and a well-established group, perhaps over, interspaced with other sessions of games. So I start out a group at low level, and we play until we're 6th or 8th level, and the campaign lasts 6 months. Okay, and some people go, "Oh my God, take you 6 months to get to 6th level?" The long time, the long-term game. Then we stop the game. We actually agreed that this is going to be a stopping point. When everybody hits this level, I'll have some sort of mini campaign, so it will have a resolution and end or stop at a cliffhanger, and then we'll pack everything up and set it aside, and either somebody else runs a game of their choosing, or I'll start another game in a different genre. And the intention is we'll play that other game for 4 or 5 months, 6 months, whatever, 3 months. Like I said, I like long-term play. That's just me. Every couple months then, right? Every 2 months they rotate to a different game system. Then we come back. We rotate back to the original group of characters and the original setting and the original world. And in this case, the characters have now aged X amount of time. In this case, I like to take a 10-sided die and add 5. So roll a 4 and add 5. Everybody's aged 9 years. 9 years. In that 9 years, the wizards had time to perfect this, blah, 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 blah. So everybody gains an extra level for free. This represents the time that everybody spent working at getting to where they are. It allows the age brackets to have a play in the game system. When you look at the mechanics of the player handbook in a lot of game systems, they include age brackets. Well, what's the point of having that age bracket when 99% of the time you're never going to get out of whatever you choose is pretty much your character's that age forever, right? Okay, so becoming a master GM. Loads of experience, i.e. time, years, some of the cases, decades. If you get a decade of GMing, you're a game master. You're literally mastering the game, the craft. The amount of time spent GMing. Do you predominantly GM instead of play? Do you GM numerous game systems? Do you GM numerous campaigns of the same game system? You're mastering that game system. You're mastering. You're gaining. Skills in those various types. Right. Failure. Learning from those experiences. Learning to fail. You're failing and succeeding and adapting to failures. And sometimes you fail spectacularly, and we learn from it as develop a sense of humor or at least a thick skin. Learning to deal with those players that fail. That's another key thing to do, right? 4, the pure love of the spirit of the game. I've talked about the spirit of the game, and I don't see too many people that talk about it. I don't know. Everybody gets it. Everybody has a view on what that means, but there's a spirit in the game that makes the game easier to become immersed in. And if you are mastering the spirit of the game, the spirit of the genre, or the spirit of the vibe that's supposed to go in that world, think about that for just a second. I know this thing's running long, and I'm a bombastic blowhard, but hey, just think about it for a minute. How many hack and slash, how many different versions of Dungeons and Dragons, regardless of their name, Pathfinder, Rollmaster, MERP, 100 types out there. What sets them apart from each other? They all in the same category. Sci-fi games, Star Wars, BattleTech, Shadowrun, all those kind of games can be, although Shadowrun kind of cyberpunk doesn't quite fit this. Anyway, they go into those game systems. The spirit of the individual game system, not necessarily the world setting. Yeah, the world setting sets them apart from each other, right? Yes, I get that part. But no, you go into the game system, the game has a vibe that sets it apart from the others. There's a style to it or a flavor to it. There is a spirit of this game that gives you. Is it dark? Is it light and happy? Is it fluffy? Is it full of camaraderie and goodwill, or is it one of those where you cringe and you go, you can't help yourself but want to play. At the same time, you're thinking, geez, I'm glad I don't live here, right? That kind of thing. The spirit, the attitude, and all this stuff comes together to make a good GM. And lastly, something my grandfather told me when I was a young man: we never stop learning. The day you think you've mastered something, that you've learned all there is to learn, and have improved as best as you're going to improve, to you've stopped growing. You've actually handicapped yourself at that point. You're also in denial. You have become deluded or blind to the world that you immersed yourself in. At no point should a master of any craft ever stop trying to learn new tricks, trying to learn new things, gain new experience, because that's what keeps us at the top of the game. That's what keeps a master technician at the top of his field, is keeping up with the field. This is true today. This is why we all end up running out and buying newer versions of older game systems just to try to keep up with the Joneses, right? It is what it is. I can master 100 old game systems and then be a stumbling novice when it comes to the newest version. You give me Dungeons and Dragons up to 3.5, and I can play and I can run and I can do a very good job at it. Will you think I'm a master at it? I don't know. Don't care. I'm going to do my best, and I think I'm going to have fun. And if you have fun, hey, then we all win. On the other hand, now I've played in 4.0. I've had access to it. I've ran a couple of campaigns in it. I played it enough that I found some good parts and some bad parts to it. I ran it enough to go, I don't like the style of the system. I like the older stuff better. But I can't say a thing about 5.0 because I haven't had access to it. It came out in the last 5 years, and I've not had the finances or the time, nor any of my associates acquired any of it. So I have not even had a chance to flip through any of it. So I can't even compare it to all of the other stuff I know. So I'm no longer a master in Dungeons and Dragons by the modern standard. Old school master, you bet. New school? No. And I recognize that. I know I can improve. I know I have room to learn and grow and to continue to hone 40 years worth of experience. There you go, my friends.